Maybe you haven't heard about it. I don't know. But grab yourself something to drink, snack, or whatever. I'm going to cover a bunch of stuff in this particular um, video, if you will, about the current Sheriff Nanos. I'm not really sure how to say his name, but I don't know if people are aware of this or not, but he is actively, since November 2024, he is under a criminal complaint for criminal investigation for the state of Arizona Attorney General's office and U.S. Attorney for the for Arizona, which since that complaint was unanimously voted by the Board of Supervisors for Pima County, that person was fired, he was removed, and they put in a separate person. Hang on, guys, I gotta find my camera. I think I dropped my camera, guys. Anyways, so the Pima County Board of Supervisors, because you can't just fire a sheriff, he can't just be removed. So there's certain processes, and every state has different statutes. But in the state of Arizona, this sheriff, who's been under criminal complaints multiple times, he was cleared once for the handling of the sexual assault. He basically messed up evidence, they believe willfully, so they filed a criminal complaint against him. And that went also to the Attorney General and U.S. Attorney's Office, and they reviewed it, and they released him of criminal charges, but said he may have violated internal policies. So they didn't completely clear him. So then came the investigation in November 2024, and it was a unanimous vote against the sheriff. Now, I'm also going to go into some things about this lab that they're sending to. I did some research on who is this lab that this sheriff is linked up with? Who are they? And basically everybody that's protecting this sheriff to do the things that he's doing, and I'm explaining exactly how he caused delays. So to start with, basically what he did is when they arrested Carlos, the guy who they immediately, after they took control of the data in his car, and also they took control of the phones, and they were immediately able to go out and find the exact location where they believed a triggering event happened, to where they believed they would find evidence. And that was because whenever somebody will put something into the car's chip or whatever computer system, they can download data directly, immediately. It's not a full forensic evaluation, but they can get information very quickly from the car. So I covered that before. So they were immediately able to go out and find evidence. So this is why I believe that Carlos is still a suspect. He's not been cleared, by the way, but guess who has been cleared? The brother-in-law of the family has been cleared. And not only that, even the sheriff department and the FBI has, just as of today, or within the last 24 hours, has asked people to stop harassing the family, that the Tommaso, or the brother or the son-in-law of Nancy, is not in any way a suspect or a person of interest. He never has been, and they're asking people to please stop harassing that family. But I'm going to go into the fact that this media, who are democratically prone, if you will, has been targeting this family, and I believe there could be actually conspiracy with the media to target this family, because they're a conservative family. They're Christian conservatives. But I went into some research of this particular lab that this sheriff, instead of sending the information, the data of the glove, directly to FBI, who uses their own, if they had sent it to the FBI, they would, within 72 hours, they would have automatically had a suspect, because they have direct access to CODIS. But when you send this data to a private lab several states over, then what happens is they can do the analysis, but then they have to send it back to the sheriff department, and the sheriff department. So it actually can cause a delay up to days, even weeks, by doing that. So it's in the tier 1, it's in the emergency status, that everything that's being processed for DNA analysis is emergency. So they should have everything back within 72 hours. So the immediate evidence that they got to find out where the evidence was from Carlos's, either the cars that they did a research, did pull the data from, or the phones from Carlos's family. They found immediately where to look to find these gloves. So I do believe that he is still suspect, and they have not cleared him, but they don't really have enough. So here's the things that I found out about the labs, about this particular sheriff. So this is the sheriff who is under possibly Secret Service investigation. So this sheriff has a deputy that has been removed from office by the Secret Service for threatening our president, Donald Trump. And so he has been on paid vacation now for 5 months. Now, the sheriff has the immediate authority to fire that deputy. He could say, did you post that? Did you post those posts? And if he says yes, then that's immediate firing. Just for the minimal conduct unbecoming. So he's being super evasive by saying, well, I'm not going to investigate this deputy until the Secret Service completes their investigation. So this entire case and the handling of it is completely 100% totally political. And this is sad because, anyways, so here's some things I found out also about this particular sheriff. You know, I don't get involved in legal cases when true crime's not my thing, but when I suspect that, when I see the family was being abused, I said, why are they targeting this family? There's really no reason for it, but it's not just like these junky YouTubers who are just totally immoral and have no ethics about targeting people with, like, for no reason. You know, they just do that. But when the media does this, then you have this split between, you have these media that you know is Democratic, and they're the ones who's targeting the family. They keep spinning this nonsense. And even the Democratic sheriff has said, look, this brother-in-law has nothing to do with this. Y'all need to quit. Okay? They're victims. Leave them alone. Right? So anyways, there's my biggest issue with this case is the FBI has complete 100% total exclusive jurisdiction over Carlos Palazuelo's phones, and here's why. When they first sent the emails with the Bitcoin ransom demand, they sent it to the media, but that act is a federal crime that no locals have jurisdiction over. So the IP and the finding who's involved and so forth, all of that belongs to the FBI. So they're kind of, in this case, they're kind of like splitting stuff up, right? Like, okay, the sheriff's department's, going to do this and this and this, but those phones, they got a warrant to go into that house, okay, and I think they worked together on that, but the locals got the warrant instead of the FBI. This is the problem that I have. The FBI has no jurisdiction. I mean, the FBI had no business allowing the county to do that. None whatsoever. And so I'm going to discuss the statutes that gives the FBI the jurisdiction to take over those phones. So because they sent an email, there's specific statutes that the emails themselves was a federal crime that only the FBI has jurisdiction over. So here it is right here. Okay, so it doesn't sound clear. And just to be fair, it's not really clear at this point if the phones have been turned over to the FBI. Just because the locals are the ones that issued the warrant, it doesn't mean that they have physical possession of them. And here's another thing. The FBI is not saying, like, okay, all the stuff is being said that the FBI, it's being leaked, if you will, to the media. The media is saying that people from the FBI are accusing the sheriff of blocking the federal agents from key evidence, right? So, but the FBI hasn't formally, officially made this comment. I just want to make that clear, okay? So it's people who works for the FBI leaking stuff. But nonetheless, they haven't basically said, no, that's not true, because people are getting angry. It's like they're working together. But here's my issue is they should not have allowed them to get the warrant. Okay, so this guy, by the way, who threatened the president, he's on paid leave. He's literally been on paid leave because the Secret Service, it could take months, even a year, before they finally get everything they do. He's being charged. So instead of being immediately fired, he's on paid vacation. He's been on paid leave for 5 months now. Okay, so a sheriff doesn't need a Secret Service conviction to fire somebody. Okay, and he's lying in his statement is say, well, I'm not going to fire this deputy because, well, I'm going to let the Secret Service do what they want to do. That's ridiculous. That's totally ridiculous. He's choosing to let him be paid. So that tells me right there, this is a corrupt this is a corrupt sheriff, and he's corrupt. And I'm going to go into the Pima County Merit Commission. Okay, so I'll show you what happened with the Board of Supervisors against this sheriff. And this is another thing. Why isn't the media discussing this? Right? So the Pima County Board of Supervisors' most recent request for criminal investigation is active and it's not resolved. So he is currently under criminal investigation by the Arizona Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney's Office. It doesn't mean like it's something that would cause him to lose his job, but he's under a criminal probe, right? So for multiple times. So let me tell you some of the things he did also. He didn't just block the FBI from getting that glove, which if there's touch DNA, it can only be ran through processing once. Then if you send it to a private lab that doesn't have access to CODIS, which is only going to cause more delays, the FBI cannot reevaluate that because they're minimal touch DNA. And this particular lab, I've done research on them. They're all, of course, all of them are Democratic. They're all Democrats. And there has been a Kentucky judge in Louisville, and just recently, in 2025, just within several last months, have filed criminal complaints, accused them of criminally being contempt of following judges' orders, and even prosecutors have had problems with this lab. So this is a very problematic lab that's called DNA Labs International that they have sent this evidence to. Okay, so then there's like money laundering. There's all kinds of stuff going on, like a lot of corruption. I'm going to go into the details of that. Okay, so by using this lab, they cannot get results in 72 hours like they could with the FBI lab. You have a woman who is, if she's still alive, she has heart medicine, she's diabetic, and she has blood pressure medicine that they said is fatal if she doesn't get her medicine. And we don't know if she's getting medicines or not. Right? They've already said that there are multiple people are involved in this. You've got emails that could potentially be from a terrorist group. That the crime of sending ransom is federal, completely federal. So it says some high priority tests can return results within 24 to 72 hours. The specific process at the DNA Labs International, which is where this sheriff sent it to, instead of allowing the feds to process it. Why would you do that? Is significantly different from the FBI's national lab because of the CODIS upload authority. So anyways, you have a CODIS gap delay because the FBI can upload a profile and then run it against the national database immediately upon completing the analysis. So the private lab DLI, we'll just call it DLI, I'm going to go into a lot. So they cannot directly upload to CODIS. So they have to send their results to a sponsor public lab, like a state or local government lab. But this is the problem. It shouldn't be sent to them. It should be sent to FBI because it's connected to the federal crime of which the FBI has exclusive federal jurisdiction. And I'm going into those statutes for review and certification before the data is even entered into the national system. So this extra step can add days or even weeks to the process. This is how insane it is. This is why people are so upset. So the FBI is the fastest thing that you can do. You will get results within 72 hours, but the DLI turnaround can take up to 30 days. That's insanity. You have a woman who was kidnapped, who, if she's still alive, you got potential terrorists running around, breaking in and taking 84-year-old women. I mean, it's just insanity. So the FBI uses this rapid DNA technology. They can generate profiles in 1 to 2 hours. Okay, so as of July 2025, the new standards allow for these crime scenes profiles to be searched in CODIS in near real time for high priority cases, which this one is. So they say if this private lab consumes the entire DNA sample, then during an initial test, the result is inconclusive. The FBI cannot perform a more sensitive retest because there's limited touch DNA. They have destroyed this case. So profiles generated by a private vendor must have at least 5% of the data verified by the sponsoring government lab before they're even eligible for the CODIS upload. So the mandatory quality control check creates a built-in delay. The FBI labs avoids by keeping the process entirely in-house. The reported conflict, where the sheriff is blocking direct access to this physical evidence, it means the investigation is operating on the private lab's timeline plus the sponsor's lab review time instead of this emergency speed. Why would they do this? Okay, that's what we need to get into. So the family can sue or they can do a writ of mandamus for immediate action, right? Because his action has far exceeded good faith behavior, far exceeded that. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the whole what their rights are, but basically, if the family puts enough pressure on the U.S. Department of Justice, and I ask people to please, they need to know this, and it makes me angry that the media is not even sharing this, because if you put pressure on them, then they can actually intervene. So there is a corruption angle that the $200,000 is being paid to the Florida lab of the county's tax dollars money, when if you send it to the FBI, it's completely free, right? All these people that doing this nonsense are all Democrats, of course. I'm not trying to attack the Democratic Party. I'm just saying this is political. So, anyways, the fact that the deputy of this sheriff, who's currently under criminal investigation, is the one who basically threatened our president, right? It's insanity. Okay, back to his phones. I'm going to go into the actual, okay, so let me see. I said, he does not need an internal investigation to fire him. He saw his post. All he has to do is ask him, did he post them? If he says yes, then he can fire from conduct unbecoming, period. He says, your logic's 100% correct from labor and policy standpoint, right? So I went on Trump's page and I tagged Cash. I'm like, look, I feel like at this point, the FBI is being neglectful, because they are taking leading steps. One, they doubled the reward. FBI posted that. They also gave specific description that based on the FBI's testing and evaluation that they did, they now have an actual physical description, the height, the weight of this person based on very specific testing they did when they put that tent up there in front of her door, and they were using specific tests that they could do to figure out exactly the height and the weight. So they and they alone, meaning the FBI, has the physical description, and it was the sheriff who within the 48 hours lied and said that there was no possible way to get a video clip from that camera because they have, she did not have subscription. How does this sheriff not know that the FBI had the ability to get that video clip? And see, for those first 2 days, they did not allow the FBI to be involved. So the FBI stepped up and said, hey, we can help or whatever. So once the FBI took over, then they were able to get that data. And so, but it caused them at least 2 to 3 days delay on getting that video. So this sheriff, he's corrupt. At first I was like, why are all these people commenting online that are locally there calling this sheriff corrupt? So, I'm not gonna agree with them until I do my research. And now I've done my research. I'm like, oh yeah, he's got to go, right? And then I find out he's already under criminal investigation by the Pima County Board of Supervisors. But of course, the people that are overseeing that are taking their sweet time, and unfortunately I think they're also corrupt. It's systemic, basically. So I'm going to go into these specific statutes that gives the jurisdiction belongs to the feds and the feds alone. Grounds for federal takeover. So, yeah, they're going to have to amend this Lindbergh law. So basically, the Lindbergh law is basically the federal government can seize an investigation if they can prove obstruction of justice or civil rights violations by the local agency, like a pattern neglect argument, conflict of interest. But generally, under a kidnapping case, they're like secondary in control. They need to amend that, like just for the fact that, when they pass that law, there's so much more advanced testing that they can do, but unlimited DNA that's even available to test, the FBI must have priority, period. That's, but that's a congressional thing that needs to be handled. But let me see. Okay, so here is the laws that the FBI has 100% legal authority to seize those phones that belong to Carlos Palazuelos. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. The guy that they detained took his phones. He lied. He went out in front of the media and said, oh yeah, they just took me, searched my phone. They didn't even question me at all. And the media asked him over and over. So they didn't even ask you questions. Nope, nothing. That's what he said. He was standing there lying through his teeth. Now maybe he was afraid. Maybe he was afraid because, you know, the whole world is watching this case, and maybe he thought that, you know, he was trying to minimize, you know, what actually happened, but he was deliberately trying to make the cops look bad. And so did the mother-in-law. The mother-in-law stood there and lied and said that they broke in her house, and, you know, with the whole ICE situation where they're constantly making up stories about how they're wrongfully detaining people. So here, because they're Latino, they go in and they break in these people's house, and everybody's saying it was dead end, and it's not. Because here's why. As soon as they had his card at it and the phones seized, they immediately went out to the area where they knew that there was an event that was triggered, because they can pull card at it. They can get GPS everywhere that car has been. If that car turns its car on or off, opens doors, it showed that there was an event where they pulled over in that area 1.5 miles from her home, and sure enough, that's where they found the evidence. And so it was only right after the Bitcoin activity where they dropped somebody the Bitcoin, and they can look, if somebody looks in that Bitcoin wallet to see if there's activity, they probably got a push notification. So they dropped some money in there, about $300, to see if anybody would check in. And as soon as they did, that's when they went after that guy. So they have a very powerful lead that led to going to chase this guy down. And as soon as they took their phones and other devices and did the search on the cars, that is when they found the exact location where they found those gloves. Okay, so that is a proper lead. So why is the mother-in-law out there lying and saying that they didn't have a warrant? She lied on them. She said, oh, yeah, and I don't think they can do that. I don't think that's proper. I don't think they can go in there without a warrant. And then minutes later, in the same conversation, she says, oh, yeah, well, I gave him permission because, you know, we don't have anything to hide. Like, she was also deflecting. And again, they could just be doing that because they're scared, right? But here's the thing. They had a warrant. It was a court-ordered search. When they pulled him over, they detained him from about 4 o'clock to several hours later. And they were getting anything and everything they can off the vehicles. They did question him. And not only did he stand there and lie to the media the same night about how, oh yeah, they didn't even question me. Nothing. They just arrested me for no reason, searched my car, and then did not even ask me questions. I knew then he was lying. And sure enough, the next day, he admitted the following things. 1, they still had his phones, which means that he's under investigation. He's not cleared. And 2, they did ask him questions. So why is he up there lying to the media? And I'm sorry, they may have been afraid, but I'm just like, no, they lied. So anyways, because they sent emails to the media, that's a federal crime. So anyways, the federal statutes for interstate communications, 18 U.S.C. 875, cyber extortion, are standalone crimes. You are correct that if this were just a hoax with no kidnapping, the FBI would have the phones. The fact that a real person was taken doesn't dilute that federal power. If anything, it triggers the Lindbergh Law, which gives them even more power. Okay? It's the failed execution by the authorities on the ground. Now, by the way, Kash Patel is currently, as of this week, on the ground there. He's been there, but they have taken the lead on some of the things, because here's what's happening. You've got stupid media people like Inside Edition who are peddling nonsense terminology like reverse infrared technology, which, by the way, Google it, it doesn't exist. And then recently today they were saying, okay, they're using AI upscaling of photos, and that's fine. But when you're adding color to a picture to try to basically put out there in the media who they should be looking for, they're interfering with an investigation, and the sheriff did nothing to put a stop to it. So guess what the FBI did? They took control of that, and they said, listen, we have decided this is who the exact description of the person is. And they give the exact description, 5'9" to 5'10", the build, the weight, and all that. So they want people to stop looking at these pictures that they're upscaling and peddling stupid, ridiculous, non-existing terminology like infrared and da-da-da, which basically the sheriff department. But the sheriff did stand up and protect the brother-in-law of the family, which originally, earlier on, like February 4th or 5th, they said, listen, there's no reason to suspect these families. It's harassment. But then they continue, meaning the media, they're targeting this family. This family is not only targeted by these kidnappers and those ransom and extortioners, you've got hoaxers, but they're being targeted by the media. And I don't know why specifically this family, except for their conservative Christians, and they happen to be very influential media people, but they have targeted this family, meaning the media. They continue to target that brother-in-law. They continue to target the family. So today, the sheriff, he says, listen, this brother-in-law, he is not a person of interest. He is not in any way, like, he's not involved, right? So that's what they did. But this is a federal crime whenever they send threats and extortion and ransom. That in itself gave the FBI the jurisdiction to get a court warrant to go after Carlos. They should be the one in total 100% control of those phones. So again, I'm not sure, because the FBI hasn't said, look, even though it is the county, the one that got the warrant to get those phones and to go into that house, we have possession. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned because this sheriff, who I'm finding all this criminal corruption going on, to having a deputy who threatens to kill the president of the United States of America, and he doesn't fire him. No, this sheriff, he should not be in charge of this case. And it's very frightening that you have an attorney general and a U.S. attorney who allows that sheriff to stay in position. And listen, the board of supervisors, it's not a political thing for them. It's not Democrats versus Republican. They are bipartisan, and they unanimously voted to send a criminal complaint to investigate, because they can't just take that upon themselves. Okay, so to remove a sheriff, it's a whole process. So they filed their complaint. They voted unanimously. They sent it to the attorney general and the U.S. attorney. And they've done nothing. So it's like a systemic corruption, in my opinion. It's not just the sheriff. It is that attorney general. And that's pretty much what's been happening across our country with this whole nightmare about, trying to go after these cartels. And oh my gosh, let's talk about the cartels. The cartels, they have found, and on both sides, they have found federal officers, they have found DEAs, they have found, I think it was like 3 different sheriffs and a whole bunch of current law enforcement who are involved with cartels. That's in our country. Now that's a very, very big problem down in Mexico, that Mexico's lost control of the cartel. They have grown to be such a big empire that they have now infiltrated the United States of America. And it's a smaller amount, of course, but it's frightening when you see somebody like this, and you've got all these media, and then you have this lab called International, who's being basically, you've got judges and you've got prosecutors making complaints against the lab for fumbling evidence and not following court orders. Who are these people? So I did a little research into the Noon family, N-U-N-E, and I don't know if there's any connection to the Congressman Noon, all right? But I just know that this particular entire family who owns this lab, who's getting all this money, instead of allowing free services from the FBI, they're all Democrats, okay? So they're all in, you know what I'm saying? It'd be different if there was some that was Republican and some was Democrat, but they're all of one party. So that's why I see this is so political. And it's just sad, because this woman is like, I just pray she's still alive, right? But anyways, there was a notice of appearance from federal prosecutors in the case, which indicate they're finally moving to take over the evidence from the sheriff. That's the most recent thing. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, give me the update. So there's movement to take over. There has been some things that the FBI has done. They have taken over the description of him. So there was a legal standoff between him and the FBI. It has intensified. Federal sources now openly accusing the sheriff of obstructing the investigation. Now he's being accused of a crime. Obstruction. Okay, let's talk about the poll workers. Oh my gosh, you guys, listen. I don't want to accuse poll workers, because it is standard protocol. Please keep in mind, it is standard protocol for any of the workers, any of the family members, and this is just standard protocol to look at absolutely everybody. Okay, so that's fine. I'm not saying the pool workers were involved. I want to make that very, very clear. But the pool workers are under investigation. Okay, so here's what happened. Not only did a YouTuber go out there and order pizza and have them go right up to the crimes, right up to the door, okay, because they keep removing the tape around the property for some bizarre reason, other than allow them, when they do finally catch somebody, to say, well, you know, the whole crime scene was contaminated, use that for legal defense. Then you had pool workers, okay, so the pool workers who are under investigation were allowed to go up in there and do, I guess, scheduled service. And it's not clear whether or not, because Savannah, by the way, Savannah Guthrie, who's the mother, or is the daughter of the victim who's been abducted, Nancy Guthrie, she owns the property, okay? She's, you know, they've got plenty of money. So anyways, she is, at the very least, part owner. So it is not appropriate for a deputy to allow a poll worker onto the property who is potentially a suspect. Why would you even do that? So there's stuff like that that went on, which was really inappropriate. Totally inappropriate. It says the FBI has absolute jurisdiction over the digital evidence due to the ransom demands. So why? Why did the FBI not take control, of those phones? Right? So anyways, the proof of power. The FBI has already exercised its authority by arresting Derek Calalala. He was the imposter who sent the fake ransom text. So they traced his VoIP phone line and Gmail account. Actually, it was a matter of days. They got that within hours, right? So, proving that when the FBI takes the lead, the results are immediate. So the blocking allegation, a federal source confirmed to Reuters and Fox News that Sheriff Nanos is blocking the FBI from accessing physical evidence, including a discarded glove and the DNA samples. So Nanos has insisted on using a private lab, which costs the county money when you could just send it to the FBI, which have immediate access to the CODIS. And this is a situation where speed is of essence. But this is what he did. Instead of sending it to the FBI's facility, they said it was dumb and insane. So it goes beyond, it's a corruption of good faith behavior of the sheriff department. So everybody's like, look, they want this guy gone, right? So why the FBI has not forced the issue, despite having the legal right to seize the evidence under the Lindbergh law. Actually, it's not the Lindbergh law, it's the statutes. Whenever there's a federal crime done, they have total control. They have total jurisdiction. And I just feel like, because those ransom sent by email, those emails could be in that phone. That's what they're trying to track, is the Bitcoin. So when they went after Carlos, it was because of the emails that was sent. So here's what happened before they detained Carlos and took all that stuff from their house and searched his car. There was a Bitcoin test by an investigator. So they sent and dropped some money, like $300. And as soon as they did that, because if you use an app service for Bitcoin, it will send a push notification. So very shortly thereafter, somebody looked in the wallet, and they took the bait, basically. So as soon as they checked that wallet, they went and got Carlos. I'm just saying, they're not announcing that, but I'm just saying, if you follow the activity, that's how it went down. Because why all of a sudden would they chase down this guy? And because they couldn't say all that, Carlos is standing out there and saying, oh, well, they just looked at my eyes and said that, I looked like him. And that's not what they said. That's so ridiculous, right? So he is still under investigation. But they've already said very clearly that there's multiple people involved. They already know this, right? It's done. It's over. They have that concluded. That's done. There's more than one person. They're not going to share a lot of stuff because they're keeping that close to their chest. But of course, that's basically it. But the people are outraged that this sheriff department has already spent. Why are you going to send $200,000 to this private Florida lab? Why would you do that, right? And cause a delay? The FBI, if they had gotten that, they would have immediately, with up to 72 hours, they probably would have had it within the same day. Okay, but they basically caused a huge delay. It's not just the timing and the delay. It is the amount of touch DNA that is available from a glove. So it can't even be retested. So they foiled that. It would be a miracle if the FBI is going to be able to get anything from that glove at this point. So here's the recent breaks in the digital case. When the sheriff holds the physical evidence, the FBI is using its operational technology division to bypass him where possible. So there's a video breakthrough. The FBI, of course, they got the residual data, but a lot of people are angry because the sheriff, we can't say that he lied, but I would definitely call it incompetence. I'm sorry, if you're a sheriff, you probably have years of of, law enforcement experience, and you have to be up to date on what the FBI can do. Come on, you work with the FBI on a regular basis. How can you not know that they have the ability to go into back-end servers and get that residual data? How do you not know that? So he discarded the camera and would not let the FBI even access that. That's insanity. So he caused at least a 3-day delay. So people were like, why did it take him 10 days to get, while the liberal media is protecting the sheriff by saying, well, this is why it took 10 days to get that video. That's a bunch of nonsense. If they had allowed the FBI to do what they had to do, but in fairness, the FBI should have took over that. Like, they should have just been like, what is your problem, right? But anyways, that's why they did cause at least 2 to 3 days. So they got the residual data. And honestly, I don't know why the sheriff department wouldn't have been able to do that. They could have done the same thing that the feds did. You know what I'm saying? But he just dismissed it. And so the FBI kind of stepped up, like, okay, I think we have a problem here. And so they got involved. But the sheriff is like, oh, well, we've been open to the FBI from the whole period. Totally wanting to, like, hide from the fact that this very sheriff has been under investigation, federal investigation, and his deputy is currently facing charges for threatening the president of the United States, and he refuses to fire him. Okay, I'm just saying. Anyways, so they finally was able to get that video. Okay, so the new activity that's been detected in the crypto wallet linked to the ransom note, which the FBI is taking control of independently of the local sheriff, and of course that is the way it should be. But the phones, because the phones potentially have email activity in it that is linked to this where they have independent jurisdiction, they should be taking control of the phones. They should have been they should have got the warrant. But anyways, they also took control of the reward, okay, and the identification of the person who's in the video. But they haven't said anything about the other people that are involved or how they know other people involved. They're still keeping that close to chest, which is appropriate, Anyways, new federal court filings from U.S. Attorney Timothy Crochane that would signal a formal takeover of the evidence or monitor the layest Bitcoin transaction for the ransom wallet. So let's see if there's anything new. So that's why I like working with AI. Even though AI can hallucinate and make errors, I mean, it's still pretty helpful. Okay, this has reached a critical point as of today. No formal takeover notice has been unsealed yet. The U.S. Attorney's Office and FBI have officially moved to exercise their... Oh, yes. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. I was getting so mad at them. I was over on Trump's page like, look, y'all, you guys are looking bad. You can't just point the finger at the sheriff department because if you're not taking jurisdiction, it's all y'all's fault too. Okay, so don't think you're going to hold this political while you're going to wave the flag about how they messed up this case. When you have jurisdiction and you letting this sheriff do this nonsense, oh, you need to do something. I was all over Trump's page today on Truth Social, and I'm tagging Cash Patel too. Anyways, as of today, thank you, Lord, they have officially moved to exercise their exclusive federal jurisdiction over the digital extortion aspects of the case. Like, this is pathetic, though. They should have did that. I'm sorry, but they should have. Anyways, so Timothy Crochane has initiated federal proceedings that signal a direct push against the thwarting of evidence. And, oh my gosh, they just letting poll workers go on up in there. The people just happen to be on the suspect list. They're just going around and no telling. Oh my gosh. Anyways, initial appearance of the imposter, Crochane announced that Derek Kallela, the California man charged with transmitting the fake ransom demand, made his initial appearance on February 5th. He's charged under 18 U.S.C. for transmitting a demand for ransom interstate commerce. Now, so there was two different demands. So there was the first one, which said that information, the only person that was there that could have possibly known. Then you had this guy just trying to capitalize on it. But honestly, I'm like, maybe he posed as an imposter, but maybe he is actually connected to the people. You know what I'm saying? You never know. But anyways, they've got him he's out on bond right now. But he said the Department of Justice will protect victims and families at all costs, and grief profiteers will be held accountable. This is what I want to hear, because I am so sick and tired of the media attacking this family brothers-in-law after they have said, listen, stop. Okay, so here's what happened. There was a company from Vietnam. Vietnam got involved. And this whole transaction, I believe, is foreign connected. I think this is a hostile foreign group, that's here. And I think people that are connected from afar, because I know that they have these spammers and they're always profiteering on cases like this. But you had a Vietnam spam center who was putting out fake information about the brother-in-law. It's always the brother-in-law. They keep targeting this brother-in-law. So they put a bunch of fake information about him out there. Okay, which both the sheriff department and the FBI said none of that is true. It's called Viet spam. Literally Viet spam, right? But these media was trying to like perpetuate that rolling lie. And so of course then you have your junk tubers, these cringy. Oh, it makes me so mad that YouTube allows us this. So here's the whole community standards with YouTube. If YouTube gets a bunch of complaints on a video that there's fake and misinformation, they generally, under previous standards, would take it down. Okay, but they have, and I shared this in a video before, using Google told on YouTube, Google's own AI that's monitoring, all YouTube comments and so forth, and taking down of videos. They said that YouTube has relaxed their standards, that even if it's 100% fake, even if they're using fake thumbnails with pictures of media logos and it's totally fake, they're not going to take it down. So you have these junk here, while my fellow YouTubers are working really hard to have a decent YouTube channel that's, got good ethics, if you will, you have these junk freaking channels who have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of subscribers, and they make money sitting there spreading propaganda. And it just infuriates me, because it's different if there's just opinions and people are just like they don't know and they're suspecting, but when they have said, listen, what this foreign hostile malicious propaganda information was put out victimizing a victim who's also a witness in a case, I feel like those victims of the family should be protected, and they should prosecute these people who are knowingly spreading propaganda. It's one thing to just like, okay, I accidentally shared something that wasn't true. I shared some fake, correct it. No big deal. It happens, right? But when these people know that they're sharing stuff that is fake and it's harming the victim of a crime like this, and you're just doing it because, hey, if people are responding, you're making money, then roll with it, right? These are just, oh my gosh, they need to prosecute them. I'm sorry, but they should. And Google should not be protected from this kind of behavior on their platform. It used to be they could be held accountable, and then there's like this law that's like grandfathered that's currently waiting for it to take effect, to be like later this year, which I covered that in a video before. So currently in the atmosphere on YouTube is just like it pretty much anything goes. So anyways, I'm very glad to see this, that these grief profiteers will be held accountable. Those are people who are directly harassing the family, like texting them and, anyways. But I also think that they need to go after people who's propagizing the stuff, the Viet spam, that the initial lies. But there's been no recovery. Once they put out those lies, and once that stuff gets repeating on the internet in different places, it just continues. But the bottom line is there's zero, zilch, not a nothing. There's no anything to make accusations against this victim's family, right? None, okay? And they even tried to say that the picture of this guy looks like the guy in the video. Like, first of all, the person in the video, okay, this guy, brother-in-law, his eyes have a very pronounced sloping downward from like the center of his eyebrows going to the outer parts of his eye. They have a downward slope, and it's very pronounced, and he doesn't look anything like the person in the video. But they've already calculated the height specifically. They know the height and weight of the person. Not only that, but they've already gone over everything with the family, the workers, and everybody else, and they know who the people of interest are and who they are not. And his brother-in-law, the brother-in-law, the son-in-law of the victim is not the person, okay? But anyways, the blocking controversy. A major rift has been confirmed between federal and local authorities regarding this physical evidence. So there's a specific demand. A U.S. law enforcement official confirmed that the FBI specifically asked Nanos to send a black glove and the DNA, okay, to them. And he said, forget you. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to send it over here who we have contract with, right? Okay. He said no, and he blocked this access, insisting on using this and spending $200,000 when they didn't have to. And not only that, but it caused delays in getting the information back. And not only that, but limiting the amount of touch DNA that's even available for retesting. They may have completely destroyed this case. That's actually what he did. So, chain of custody risk. Legal experts warn that if private lab consumes the DNA sample, it is ruled inadmissible in a future federal trial due to a broken or compromised chain of custody. So he deliberately, willfully destroyed this case. Why? Why would he do that? So, bypassing the sheriff's forensic bottlenecks, the FBI has used its own operational technology division to secure new leads. So they have enhanced surveillance, despite the reports doorbell camper was tampered with. That's what the sheriff did. Lied to the public, saying that it wasn't possible to get anything. It's almost like he's trying to help the criminals, in my opinion. They showed, based on testing, that his person's 5'9" to 5'10". Okay, and they've identified the backpack and all this. And then FBI took the initiative to double the reward to 100,000, and is currently vetting more than 13,000 tips. So they're taking control of the trips, okay, which they've kind of been doing that. So they are monitoring the ransom wallet linked to the emails sent to the media outlets. Any movement of the funds into regular exchange will trigger. But they're also taking over. They have to, there's headers. There's a bunch of stuff forensically that they have to do to basically take off any masks that they use using VPNs or stuff like that to use the headers and the emails. And this can take a little bit of time, but they're working on that also. The Pima County Sheriff remains the lead on the physical scene because the crime originated in his county. Well, I don't know about that. But anyways, the U.S. Attorney had not yet filed a motion to compel or a federal grand jury subpoena to forcibly take the glove and phones, which I think that they should, likely to avoid a total collapse of interagency cooperation during an act of kidnapping. Anyway, specific rules from the Florida lab expected within days. And see, this is so wrong. Anyways, or monitor unsealing of a federal grand jury indictment that would officially take the case away. See, I don't know what they're talking about, the unsealing of a... What? Unsealing of federal grand jury indictment. Whoops, misspell. Anyways. I don't know of any grand jury indictment. Right. This is where the AI gets stupid. They'll suggest things that aren't even relevant. It's like, oh my gosh, please stop wasting my time. Anyways, the blocked evidence and potential grand jury action, a potential legal strategy the FBI and U.S. Attorney could use to bypass him. I think people should just keep pressuring Kash Patel and the president, because this is already political. So tell them, say, look, we want you taking over. We want, stop letting them do what they're doing, right? So they have to be strictly secret under Rule 6E, the summary of current evidence. Anyways, so that's what's going on in this case. Let me go back to this one over here. Okay, so this is this deputy that works for the sheriff. This is what he did. It's like, I don't care what your party is, going around and threatening a president. That's insanity, and it makes me mad that he's been on a 5-month vacation. Can you imagine? He's just sitting around on his couch getting paid because he threatened the president of the United States. That's insanity. So Deputy Ramon Hernandez, who currently is employed via this same sheriff, threatened the United States president. So the hidden probe, while the focus on the deputy's threats, federal investigators always look at the supervisory chain. So if he was aware of the threats and did nothing under federal agents stepped in, he could be looked at for misprision and felony, which is basically knowing a crime and ignoring it because you have the authority to deal with it. So not just that he didn't fire him, but that he didn't prosecute him, or even report him. I mean, but he's like, oh, I don't condone, violence, boo, boo, boo. But yet he won't fire him, and he easily could, right? There's been deputies fired for so much less. It's so wrong what he's doing. And he's spending $200,000 in taxpayers' funds for private testing. And instead, he's refusing the free superior service of the FBI lab in Quantico. Well, you got a woman who's been kidnapped, who may or may not be alive, who needs her medicine to survive. I mean, it's insanity. He says he's just doing his job. Anyways. I got so mad. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is about, so they did find fingerprints in the house. And so when they found the gloves, one of the things they're trying to do with the gloves is to compare them to the fingerprints found in the house. And by the way, they haven't said how many sets of fingerprints or how many different fingerprints they have found either, by the way. Let me see who all's in here. Yeah, I know, right? Okay, guys, hello. Let me get caught up with you. Edmund's in here. See, Cam's in here. Oh, by the way, guys, I want to show you. I got a package in the mail. I've got my Sims 3 game. I'm going to be trying to install it here in a little while. So maybe later tonight, if I can get it going, I'll do another live stream. My first experience with Sims 3. So we'll see. Okay. So here's what's going on with this. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos stated in subsequent briefings, investigators gathered fingerprints. This sounds plural to me, but anyways, they're pretty confident that there's more than one person, but like I said, they're keeping a lot of stuff close to chest, and they should, okay? Details regarding who and when these findings were discussed include, there was initial discovery on February 3rd. Sheriff Nanos confirmed his team processed the residence of the crime scene and gathered all the evidence we could, fingerprints, DNA, and camera images, although he said that there's other cameras, but those haven't been released. The only reason they're releasing what they have on the guy is because there was a specific person that was exposed. But there are, there's a lot of stuff that's not being released yet, just so people know. So, anyways, and then February 11th, 12th, law enforcement briefed on the case told Reuters and ABC News that forensic tests were being run on newly discovered the latex gloves that they just happened to get as soon as they detained Carlos Palazuelos. And I believe, and nobody in law enforcement has said this, but I believe that the reason that they were able to go to a specific location to find those gloves is because of a triggering event. So I'm gonna isolate that activity. So that was because of the yeah. And then it was shortly after that they went to the specific location to find the gloves due to getting car data and phone data of Carlos and his family. This is why I believe finding those gloves are connected to Carlos Palazuelos. They haven't said this, though, okay? This is me, I'm saying this, but it's obvious, right? So he was pinpointed solely due to the Bitcoin activity. But the media, this is why it makes me mad. The media, that are totally democratic, keep trying to make victims out of Carlos and his family and hiding the fact that it had nothing to do with eyes and matching a video. It had totally to do with the Bitcoin activity. So it suggests a connection between the digital trail and his detainment. So the Bitcoin activity and detainment. So on February 10th, shortly after TMZ and the local news reported new movement in the Bitcoin account, which was basically the law enforcement dropped some money there to bait them to check the account, because when they check an account, depending on how they do that, whether they use an app or whatever, they can ping that to a specific location. Soon after, right after they did that, they're like, let's see if they take the bait, and they did. SWAT teams were mobilized, and that he was chased down and pulled over, okay, and then as soon after they took data from his car, okay, the FBI clarified that he was identified through background investigations, not just his resemblance to the mass suspect that these fake news people were putting out. They wanted to clarify that, okay? So the digital link, this background work reportedly includes tracing the cryptocurrency wallet and analyzing digital communications related to the ransom demands. So he was targeted. It was a targeted search for evidence. So as soon as they got his phones, and it wasn't just his phone, they took all of the phones in the house and other devices, okay? During his detainment, they pivoted to a highly specific search area. Why would they do that? Well, because locations and findings, the FBI launched this search in this specific roadways in the Catalina foothills. So during the search, they
recovered. I think it was 2 gloves. I don't think it was just one. They might have got other stuff. This is just all we know about that they got. So there's a GPS connection. They believe the precision of the search, focusing on specific roadside shrub, likely was from a GPS stop event data or location pings that was recovered from the seized devices, or possibly downloaded from cars. So the car that he drove, what I think was his family car. So he drives a van. He admitted that his van was in that area. Here's another thing. January 28th. There was a post by Nancy Guthrie about, is anybody missing an Amazon package? Somebody left a package on her porch literally 2 days before she was abducted. So I think that was a dry run of testing stuff to go up on the porch, pretend like, you're dropping something there, and there's no mention of that after that, like what that package was. Was it anything in it? Was it actually a mistakenly delivered package? But the fact that she was abducted 2 days after that package, so she made a post on, I forget what, some kind of platform that she uses. She said, is anybody missing a package? So this guy, Carlos, says that he may have been on her property to, deliver a package. He wasn't sure. So I feel like, one, they would deliver a package, and this is just me speculating, deliver a package to basically do a dry run to kind of get a real close-up look to what they may have. And I feel like I know that they knew about that camera before they went there. A lot of people are like, oh, he's so dumb. He didn't even know about the camera. Why wouldn't they have scoped that out? Well, actually, I believe they did. Somebody put a package on her porch, okay? And then when he was like, they were saying, okay, well, look how he ducks when he goes underneath the arch to go on the porch. That's like he's trying to be, he didn't know if there was a camera up above. I'm like, no, if you look closely, when he goes underneath that arch, his face is on looking down at the ground because he's looking for something on the ground to block the camera that he knows is there. Not only that, so first they do the dry run to check out what cameras is there. Then you see a picture of this person without their gear on, and everybody's talking about this like, oh my gosh, no, he didn't even know there was camera. No, they did not know if that person had a subscription or not, which tells you it's not a family member, because they would know if there was a subscription on her camera or not. So this person shows up in front of the camera 20 to 25 minutes before they show up with the gear to disable the camera. So he does a dry run with the package. 2 days later, he shows up in front of the camera with no gear on, just to do a test run to see if there's an active, subscription. Any alerts? Does lights come on? Is there anything coming on in intercom? Does the cops come? Nothing. 25 minutes later, then he shows up with the gear on and the little flashlight in his mouth. And then he walks underneath the arch, which is face down on the ground. And they're saying he's trying to duck from overhead cameras. I'm like, no, he's looking on the ground for something to cover up the camera. And if you look, when he goes up to the camera, right, he's looking around. So then he turns around, goes out and picks up the flowers. And when he does it, his face is facing downward so he can see. And so when he comes back in, he's got what he needs. He's no longer got his head ducked. So I don't think that it has anything to do with overhead cameras or anything like that. I think they knew that camera was there. They just didn't know if it was active. But anyways, there's that. That's my personal opinion. So investigators closely examined his vehicle and searched his girlfriend's mother's home, seizing multiple electronic devices while he's lying and saying, they just didn't even question him and let him go. And that's another thing. He lied. Why would he lie? They did ask him questions, and he told everybody that, no, they didn't even ask me questions. They just pulled me over and said I looked like this person and blah, 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 and didn't even ask me questions. I mean, that just made him sound so dumb. No, they asked him all kinds of questions. But anyways, he admitted that the next day, so he's caught in his own lies. So seizing this stuff that belonged to him and his entire family. So it was done to verify his claim that he was working as a delivery driver, GLS, and DoorDash at the time of the abduction. So then there was the black gloves and other items right after they get this. Okay, so they did this by the car analysis. I don't think they've said how many cars they took data from. It may have just been his car that he was driving, Okay, 2 of his vehicles at the property. Okay, so he reported that while he was detained in a police car, they searched 2 of his vehicles, examined his car closely at the scene. Okay. So that data that took place, it was probably based on coordinates, and it wasn't like, that's why it took them a long time. It was just kind of general to that area. It says that's the most logical explanation for how investigators were able to walk directly to a specific patch of desert 1.5 miles away and find a discarded glove in a vast search area. Modern vehicles are essentially witnesses that record every move, and data pulled from the 2 cars of Pazuello's property likely provided a digital breadcrumb. The event trigger. Investigators dumped the data from a car's infotainment or telematic system using tools like the Burla Ive. They aren't just looking at GPS map, they're looking for system events. Gear shift to park. If the car shifted in park at that 1.5 mile mark at 3 a.m., it creates a time-stamped event. The door opened and closed. If the driver's door opened and closed at the same spot for only 30 seconds, it suggests someone stepped out to toss something, or there could have been a transfer of her to another vehicle. So interior lights and weight sensors. Sensors can record if a passenger, like a kidnapping victim, was moved or if the weight in the seat changed. So there's a lot of data they could have got from the cars. So the handshake with the phone. If the cell phone seized from Carlos or his families were synced via Bluetooth or USB to either of those 2 cars, the car's computer stores a log of that connection. So there's an overlap. If the phone's GPS and the car's internal GPS both show them sitting at the 1.5 mile mark at the same time, the "I was just driving for DoorDash" alibi becomes almost impossible to defend unless there was a legitimate delivery at that exact roadside bush. I don't think somebody's going to stand out there on that desert and but whatever. Anyways, you know what I'm saying. So while the FBI led the foothills search, the FBI took control of that. So this explains why the FBI specialized teams led the search in the foothills on that morning of February 11th, hours after they took possession of his cars and his electronic devices. So they processed the car data overnight, found a GPS cluster or stop event at the 1.5 mile mark, and they sent the teams there at the first light. So they found the black gloves pretty quickly, actually, and those gloves matched the marked suspect on the camera. Now this right here is where it gets really ugly. Once they got possession of those gloves, the sheriff department he's just starting to act really stupid. So here's the thing though, this sheriff is out there telling people that the FBI has agreed to them using this is why he looks so sus, because he's telling the world, I'm not doing anything wrong, we're all in agreement here, we agreed to send everything out to that private laboratory. He done no, the FBI did not. They did not agree for him to send that to a private lab and cost the county $200,000 and cost delays that it would cause and minimal DNA to be ruined forever. But that's what he's telling the world. That's why I know this man is corrupt. So anyways, by taking data from both cars and devices from the home, they're checking to see if one car was the scout for the 28th dry run and the other was the transport for the actual abduction. So they're looking for coordinated movements between the 2 vehicles. If the Florida lab returns a DNA match from those gloves that connects back to the people associated with those cars, the person of interest status will likely shift to arrest warrants. So just to clarify, okay, the sheriff is lying to the public, claiming the FBI agreed to send the glove. This is how bad it is, guys. To Florida, cost taxpayers money, delay response, and also limit DNA to point where may not even be able to retest, ruining the case. And the FBI says that is not true and moving to take more exclusive control. Yes, there's definitely a power struggle, guys. That's happening. It's happening. That's exactly how the situation is being characterized by federal sources and investigative journalists on the ground as February 13th. The public turf war has revealed a massive contradiction between the sheriff's narrative and the FBI's actions. So to clarify the points that you've raised, the agreement claimed Sheriff Chris Nanos publicly stated that he and the FBI agreed to use a private Florida lab for consistency, but the federal sources are immediately leaking to Reuters and Fox News that this is false. They claim the sheriff is actively blocking their access to the physical evidence, the cost to taxpayers, while the FBI laboratory in Quantico provides the services for free to local agencies. Pima County has spent approximately $200,000 to ship and process evidence at the private Florida facility. The delay in DNA risks. Legal experts and federal agents have warned that private labs lack the CODIS national database upload authority the FBI has, which creates a multi-day or multi-week sponsor lab delay. Furthermore, if the private lab consumes the entire DNA sample during the test, the FBI may be unable to retest it with their more advanced technology. So the FBI's response is the FBI is already moving to take control by operating independently. They doubled the reward, released their own independent suspect profile. So why the sheriff's narrative is contradicted. No CODIS access, bypassing federal resources. So the summary of the conflict. Oh my gosh, this sheriff is a liar. Is trying to blame the FBI for his awful acts also. Not going to be well for him. By the way, did you know that because of the investigations that was going against him, he lost an election in 2016, the sheriff. And then he was reelected, sadly, in 2020. So, not going to be good. I just hope somebody runs against them. The only thing is, sheriffs are shoo-ins if nobody runs against them. Oh my gosh, there's some politically hostile climate in Pima County right now. He's essentially fighting a two-front war, one against the FBI over the Nancy case, and another against his own board of supervisors and sheriff's union over his leadership. His strategy of blaming the feds or claiming they agreed to his choices is already backfiring as the election cycle looms. So he's up for re-election this year, and his handling of this case is providing massive amounts of political ammo for his opponents. Oh my gosh, if he's got somebody running against him, I'm pretty sure he's going to lose. Yeah, I hope so. The no confidence vote. The Pima County Deputies Association has already issued a vote of no confidence against him. His own Pima County Deputy Association voted no confidence against him, said he is failed leadership and the way he has turned his head to internal issues while clashing with federal agencies. The blame game strategy. So the FBI agreed to use the Florida labs. That's what he says. It's not true, guys. Don't believe the hype. Okay. Nanos is trying to shield himself from the blame if the black glove DNA comes back inconclusive or the sample is destroyed. So the FBI's rebuttal, the fact the FBI is leaking their frustration to major outlets like Reuters and Fox News shows they're not letting him get away with that nonsense. Right? Without directly attacking him so they know they still have to work with him, right? So a lot of people are getting mad, like, and I'm one of those people, at the Republicans. I'm like, I'm sorry, but y'all need to take control. This is ridiculous. Right? Just, no. Okay, guys, I think that's going to be it. That's the bottom line. So, in conclusion, here's the situation with the sheriff. His deputy is facing charges with Secret Service. He's been under investigation. The sheriff refuses to fire when he very easily could and should fire him for threatening the President of the United States. He was under criminal investigations by his own county multiple times, and he is currently actively under investigation with the Arizona Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney that's currently sitting with the state of Arizona. And yeah, so that's not a good situation because he did, in fact, allow poll workers who were on the suspect list, or at least the person of interest. Again, that doesn't mean the poll people did anything, just anybody and everybody that unfortunately had connections to that house for any kind of workers. They're all going to be, evaluated or whatever. It doesn't mean that they're connected just because they're investigating them. But to allow poll workers on a property against the rights, I don't know if Savannah, who owns the property, gave them permission, but it doesn't sound like they even called them. And there may have been an agreement where they allowed them to take over the properties and manage it while they're gone, trusting the authorities or whatever, because they have to check their mail and stuff like that, because communications, obviously, there's criminal communications going on. So any mailbox of these properties, including Annie's house and potentially Savannah's house and Nancy's house, which is owned by Savannah, but all of these houses, their mail are being monitored, for obvious reasons, because it's a ransom case, right? But as far as the other stuff that there's being allowed on the property, to allow a pool person just to go right up to the door and then escort them to do whatever they want on the property with their pool and stuff, it just sounds insanity, because they haven't cleared anybody yet, right? It's still a lot of stuff that's still being tested or whatever, but I just don't think any workers should be on that property for any reason. And it's just, I know there's a lot of hype about that too, but anyways, I think the FBI is just tiptoeing. I think that, if they go in there and just take full control, then it'll just turn into this political poo-poo show more than it already is. And so they're just like they have to work with them, right? But anyways, the bottom line is Carlos has not been cleared, but the brother-in-law has been cleared. He is not in any way a person of interest. Carlos is. So let's keep that in check. There's more than one person, and I personally think it's very possible that the person was wearing a mask underneath the ski mask. And I cannot believe what TMZ did. Somebody, I don't remember who it was. I generally don't listen to TMZ, but TMZ said they were very dismissive of this. I think he was a YouTuber, but he suggested basically what I did. I'm sure there's a lot of people who think that the person was wearing a silicone mask. I'm not alone here, right? But he suggested, and TMZ was just stupidly dismissive. They was just like, well, why would they wear a ski mask on top of a mask? Okay, well, duh, because if you wore only the silicone mask, it would be so easy to know that it is a silicone mask. I mean, hello, you're up literally inches away from the camera. It's going to be so obviously that you're wearing a silicone mask. Hello. So that's why you put a ski mask on top of a silicone mask, because it's less obvious. But if you're an artist like I am, and you look at trying to sketch this picture, it looks too bizarre that the eyebrows are misaligned from the center of the eyeballs, the pupil, and the eyes. They're off, they're misaligned, and if you just look really close, and I could be wrong. I'm just saying, myself and a lot of people believe that there's a mask underneath that, but the lips and the shape of the eyes are clearly exposed, right? And so there's a lot of people, there's other people that think it's a female, and I'm like, it's a possibility, but I just think that the whole silicone mask was just because it would have like fake mustache and beard. It would just be a diversion, basically, and I think it's possible there's a silicone mask involved, and I still feel that way. I know up close lighting like this is really not a good thing to go by, but those eyebrows, I'm sorry, maybe someone just has a really very rare alignment with their eyebrows and their eyes, and I couldn't sketch the picture. I tried, and I was just like, nah, man, I can't make this a human being here, because it's just off. They're off centered. So if you ever seen somebody up close that's wearing a mask, and if you don't put that on, you have to put it on just right, because you have to line the opening of the mask, and these masks are pretty much universal, so it doesn't mean they're going to fit your facial structure perfectly. And then if you put a ski mask on top of that, it could cause a misalignment, and I see a misalignment. Again, okay, I could be wrong, but I'm just saying that I know I'm not alone. I know a lot of other people think there's a silicone mask. And for TMZ just to be dismissive of that, would just saying something stupid like, well, why would you put a ski mask on top of a mask? I'm just like, that's what we're working with. And that's why I don't watch TMZ. And that's going to be it for this one. And thank you all for stopping in. And I hope you all have a blessed day. Bye.